welcome to another episode of Strive 365, where we're helping guide you to live a better life, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, whether it be personally or professionally. I am your host, Justin Arnold, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Eric Hinman. Some of you may know him, some of you may not, but he's just a health and wellness entrepreneur. He's also a 5-time Ironman, founder of successful companies in fitness and food. He also advocates for community positivity and sustainable living, and strives to live each day to the fullest. And I can tell you, just by following him and getting to know him, I would say over the past year on Instagram, his social media channel definitely does that. So this guy is infectious energy. He's a normal human. He'll talk to you. He's a great dude. And I was like, man, we got to have him on here. So Eric, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, so I mean, my background is entrepreneurship. I've built various brands myself. Right now, the current chapter of life I'm writing is helping others build their brands. And how I got to where I am, I competed in 5 Ironmans from 2010 until 2014. And during those years, I realized that some of the health and wellness protocols that I had implemented into my life were making me the best version of myself and really satisfying my soul. And I felt like I had found my passion through those years. So, it's my exercise is a huge component of my life. I use the moniker movement is medicine. I truly believe we were designed to move and move often and lift heavy objects and be out in nature. So, I really base my life around some of these things that just kind of make sense ancestrally as to how we should live our lives. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to build a business around that as well.
Yeah, now you guys just heard that little snippet and you can realize why I had to have him on here. We have a lot of things in common. Speaking of nature, talking about just movement is medicine. You've heard these terms on here from me as well. So curious, you told us a little bit about your background, but how'd you get started? Like, what was the initial, was there something, or was it just something you've always been doing your whole life? What was the pivotal moment?
Yeah, so I played 3 sports in high school. I ran cross country, I ran track, and I played basketball. I also played outside of school. I played Little League and Senior League baseball, and I played 1 year of football. So I loved team sports growing up. I loved individual sports growing up as well. And I always knew that I wanted to create my own destiny, whether that was in business or, athleticism. My father managed a small insurance company in upstate New York, so I watched him lead from a young age. And when I got out of college, I started my first career, which was building a property and casualty insurance agency. And I was sitting a lot, driving 50,000 miles a year. And I started getting a little gut. I thought Subway was healthy because it was a sub and it wasn't pizza. So I just didn't have an education really around, nutrition, around purposeful exercise, around recovery, sleep. I realized how some of these things might affect you physically, but I had no idea how they affected you mentally. So when I got into triathlon, it was honestly just through, I had hired a personal trainer that helped me get back into aesthetically good looking shape. And then I signed up for a 15K run, 9-mile race, and it just crushed me. So I realized that looking fit and being fit were 2 very different things. And around that same time period, 2009, a bunch of my friends were getting these really fancy bikes that had 4 handlebars. And I was like, what the hell is that? And they're like, a triathlon bike. We're doing this triathlon that's coming to Syracuse, the Syracuse Half Ironman. Ah. So I was kind of intrigued. I looked it up and I'm like, 1.2 miles swimming, that sounds crazy. And then you bike 56 miles, that sounds even crazier. And then you run a half marathon after biking that far. You guys are nuts. So I signed up for my first sprint distance triathlon and almost drowned in the swim. I had no swimming background. I passed a bunch of people on the bike, passed a bunch of people on the run, which was kind of empowering. And I ended up coming in 3rd in my age group. And I was like, wow, I wonder if I really dedicate, purposeful training to this, if I could get good at that sport. So I ended up hiring a coach. His name was Mike Corona. He was a guy who was beating me in a lot of the local races. And, he taught me a super valuable lesson that there's a difference between exercise and training. Training is purposeful. You do every session for a reason, and exercise is burning calories, which is completely fine too. But I wanted to train and I wanted to excel at the sport. So he taught me to slow down, to speed up, and he taught me the Maffetone method, which is zone 2 heart rate training. And he slowed me down on all of my efforts so that I could really increase my training volume. And endurance sports are all about durability, building an aerobic engine and building durability. So yeah, under his guidance, I was able to get to Kona, the World Championships twice. And, during that time period, I had a lot of time alone with my heart rate elevated in nature. And I really attribute that to almost like a psychedelic experience where I just had a lot of space and time to think and reflect and understand how I wanted to design my days so that I thrived, but then also to give back to others and to attract opportunities. And that's really where I'm at now. I don't really compete all that much anymore. I really prefer just living my life the way I know I thrive, and then having a full cup so I can give back to others and hope that others can take some of these things that I learned over the years, implement them into their lives. So, they have a full cup, they can give back and they can attract opportunities into their lives.
Man, I there's so much I loved about that, and I appreciate using the word "thrive" for self-promoting our show so much. But yeah, it's true. Like, and it was. I'm glad you shared that story about being challenged. Like, people could just go to your channel right now and be like, "This guy's jacked. He was born this way," and I'm sure you've heard that. Like, he's always been this way. But it's grateful for people to hear that. Like, your first time around wasn't so pleasant, but it was a learning experience. Correct? That's what it sounds like. Yeah. So. For sure.
100%. Yeah. I mean, everything for me has been the 10,000 hour rule. I've gotten to a pretty high place now in CrossFit, but I couldn't overhead squat a PVC pipe, going back into my triathlon years. I couldn't back squat my body weight. I couldn't do ring muscle ups and all of these crazy things that I can do high volume now. It was just from dedicating 10,000 hours to it. And triathlon was the same. I really have no genetic gifts by any means. I think the only gift I might have is the ability to focus on one thing at a time for long enough to succeed in it. So that's what triathlon was. That's, CrossFit, where I'm at now, High Rocks. It's just been, really having tunnel vision to get to where I want to go, and also like enjoying the process as much as some of the sessions suck. Like, I do enjoy the process. I'm very like purpose driven and progress driven, and I just like incremental improvement every day.
Man, that's right on. So you talked about purposeful training over and over again. I love that term. I'm probably going to start borrowing it, and because I say something similar, like, why are you training for? For example, I've talked about it here on before. I was just training to be the best dad, training for life, training to keep up with my clients, my kids, and things like that. But I recently, last year, took on hockey as a sport because I got two kids that play, and I couldn't skate. And now I'm like a hockey coach. I'm USA certified. I'm coaching. I'm playing on two teams, and something I never thought of. And it was really cool because it goes along with what you're talking about. It gave me something to train for. So now I'm really training just to be able to do the things on the ice really well and show these kids at age 42, but also just be better at this sport because I do play on a team now, it's really cool. Mm-hmm. So I love that you use that. So I'll ask this counter to that. I do have a few other things too, but how would you encourage somebody that's listening to this right now as far as, what if they can't find purpose in their training? They're not training for like hockey with me. They're not training for what you might be training for. What about that person just sitting and listening to this is like, well, what's my purpose? I don't know. Should I go do bodybuilding? Should I do this? Well, what's an answer you give somebody like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to think of this as a dartboard. Like, you're very rarely going to hit the bullseye in the very first throw. You're going to be way over here and way over here and way over here. And then eventually, hopefully you land on the bullseye. So that's kind of what this is trial and error. I was playing tennis and I played golf for a year, and, I played pickup basketball, and I played pickleball, and I did all of these things until I found triathlon. And then just triathlon really took a hold of me. And my metric for this stuff is, am I completely in the moment when I'm doing it? I'm not thinking about anything else. I am just completely present in whatever I'm doing. And then, anything where your mind is wandering, where you wish you were somewhere else, you wish you were with someone else, you wish you were in a different environment, that means it's not for you.
Ooh,
so,
I like that.
I've consciously designed my environment here. So it is exactly what I want to be doing every single day. I just went for a mountain bike ride before we jumped on this call, and I literally had an hour to go door to door, and we live right by the mountain, so I could do that. And that was a conscious decision of being here to make mountain biking super accessible. And mountain biking is an activity where I'm completely present and in the moment. I absolutely love it. It produces this incredible flow state afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Triathlon was that for me. Business is that for me. Having conversations like this is like that for me. So my advice would be write down that list of, the conversations you're having when you're completely present, the people you're with, what they do when you're completely present, and those activities where you're completely present. And that's probably what you want to design your life around.
Man, I love that. What you write those down to be completely present, and what kind of gives you joy in that. Man, that's some great advice. Now, you do a lot. I love your energy. If you guys go on his Instagram, you'll see his training backyard, right? Like, this thing is cool. I want to come out there one day because it's like, this just is, the view's neat. I love even in the various elements that you train in, which is really cool. So with all that said, how do you stay so disciplined, so committed to show up every day and be present, not only in your workouts, but even stay motivated and focus on some of these goals and things you're working towards?
Yeah, structure. I mean, I'm super, super structured. My daily routine is about the same day in and day out. But there's some variety in it too. I travel to different places. I meet new people. I have different conversations. I bike different places. I sometimes work out at different CrossFit gyms. There's new people in the mix. But ultimately, I know what I need in my life every single day in order to feel like I accomplished that day, and that, if it was my last day alive, that it was a complete success for me. So I block out time periods for, my strength training, my aerobic conditioning, when I'm going to do podcasts, when I'm going to take calls, when I'm going to create content, when I'm going to do my recovery routine, when I'm going to plan an adventure, when I'm going to have people at the house to, bond with people and have really good conversations, when I'm going to eat. So everything is just kind of on autopilot, but not in a way that it's mundane. Like, I look forward to that routine every single day because, again, within it, there is some variety of, like, who are the people I'm going to be with today? Who are the conversations I'm going to be having with? And where am I going to be biking? What's the workout today? So, there's variety within each of those, but the routine stays the same. The time blocking stays pretty much the same, even when I'm traveling. And, that keeps me from overthinking, and that keeps me also from having decision-making fatigue, which I think we all suffer from. The more you can put the things you want to do on autopilot, the less decision-making fatigue you're going to have.
Yeah, you say autopilot, and I'm with you. I'm disciplined in a lot of things. I'm not sure about you, but one thing for me is, with my life, with kids and things that happen, sometimes it doesn't go as planned. Sometimes I get thrown off. Does that ever happen to you? And if so, how do you respond? How do you react?
Yeah, it definitely happens. There's going to be speed bumps in life. Life's a roller coaster ride, but I just try to get back to my routine as quick as possible. If I'm traveling somewhere, like, I know if I get my workout in, I'm going to feel good, even if I feel like shit after that long plane ride. If I find out a close friend or family member is sick, I still try to stick to those routines that give me positive energy. So, I'll jump in cold water for 3 minutes. I know that for me, just completely resets my nervous system and makes me feel really good again. So I just get back to those routines that give me positive energy instead of, going down a downward spiral of, drinking, doing drugs, overeating, all of these things we know are going to, maybe give us a quick dopamine hit in the moment, but there's going to be some kind of depression afterwards. Our serotonin levels are going to spike, and then they're going to go up well below baseline after those activities. So yeah, I stick to those things where I know they get me back into a positive mindset and they give me positive energy.
Yeah, I'll couple that up. It's similar thing. So, like, I'll give a personal testimony on that one, because for me, it happens, and I've been exhausted, and not that I want to go to drinking or drugs or overeating. That's never been my issue. My issue is just I want to read or take a nap or sit on the couch. And as soon as I start feeling that, I need to move or jump in a cold plunge. Like you said, I've done that middays. It's amazing what like 3 to 5 minutes in that can do for me. And I know there's plenty of people listening that have said to me they will never do that. But I'll tell you this, I got a trampoline in both my gym and in my basement. Just jumping on that like 150 times gets me going. Like I said before we got on here, I'm working on my second book. I wrote a first book. Before I wrote that first book, I was not a guy that could sit still for 5 minutes. I've always been a movement guy, very hyperactive. I even was told I had ADHD when I was younger and claimed that title and all the things that came with it. But I realized that, I can do these things, but sometimes I just got to get up and move, and then I'm re-energized. And like you said, definitely the hormone, but my cognitive function is massively improved with just even like the trampoline or the cold plunge or things like that. So people that are listening, I highly encourage your mind or your body or whatever you're listening to is going to tell you, don't do this, go take a nap or go to the other vices that he mentioned, but try to do the opposite and try to challenge yourself and just do it. Even if at first few minutes, it sucks, right? Because eventually you'll feel better because the endorphins, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100% because of the endorphins, but also you're explaining activities that bring you back into the moment. And that's so key. A trampoline is a really cool example that I've never thought of, but it's a skill-based activity that has risk associated with it. So you have to be in the moment. And, that's why I mountain bike over just riding on the road, because with mountain biking, there's some risk involved and it's a skill-based activity. So it drops you into the moment even more so than a non-skill-based activity with no risk associated. So that's probably one of the reasons why the trampoline works so well for you.
I never thought about it. It was something simpler. And I was like, I'm kind of a kid. No, let's just say I'm a kid. Sometimes I just like to play. Like even with my movement practice, I might be doing some CrossFit style stuff or some thrusters or whatever. But then sometimes I might just get on the ground and crawl. I have monkey bars in my gym. I just like to goof around. Like, so the trampoline to me is like, I'll be like, wee. So like, it's just one of those fun things. And so I could be in whatever state, tired, exhausted, or even a little down. And as soon as I get on that for a little bit, totally picks me up. Man, this seems like a good segue to, I know you've talked about, you don't really talk about it much, but mental health. It's definitely a big part of overall well-being. You've opened up in the past, correct, about your struggles and challenges with it? Yeah. And sure. I believe it's on your website. And can you share some of your strategies that you've done? I mean, you probably have already shared without coupling it together, but could you share some of your strategies for overcoming mental health and just staying balanced in life, or the best version of balance? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, all of these things that I do, the physical aesthetic, the performance, they're almost byproducts of I'm doing them because I want to feel a certain way. And by feel, I mean having mental clarity, having emotional well-being, being creative. And so, the cold exposure, the sauna routine, the exercise, I mean, all of those, they're mind and body, they're combined. And, obviously with all of these, you're increasing your baseline serotonin so that when joy happens, you can feel even more joy from it. So that's kind of the science behind, exercise and the cold exposure, is that you're increasing your ability to experience joy by increasing your ability to produce serotonin. So there's a massive link between physical exercise, lifting heavy things, being outside, getting your heart rate up, doing things that put you in that fight or flight mode, whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold, and mental well-being. I mean, I always explain the cold plunge is the best thing that you could possibly do to create a state change in the least amount of time. If you jump in 40-degree water for 3 minutes and you're having the worst day in the world, it instantly just reshapes your mindset and puts you back into this positive, like, I'm excited about life again state. So, I mean, cold exposure, for so many has become an incredible mental benefit, and it obviously also has physical benefits too. But the majority of what I do is for the mental well-being.
Could you open up about like one of your struggles or with depression or anxiety or mental health? Could you open up a little bit about that and just talk about it, and like not just how you overcame it, but could you share, and maybe somebody can relate and hear that story for sure?
Yeah, definitely. So, I've been fortunate that I've never had any deep depression or, tremendous anxiety, but just like anyone else, I do have bad days. I do have days where I'm feeling anxious, and, I know I can resort to those routines to get back to a level-headed mind. I mean, I've really noticed when I started doing the cold exposure 5.5 years ago that, it now takes something monumental to like stress me out. If someone cuts me off on the road, like it literally is just,
isn't that crazy?
A blip in time. It's not a big deal. I don't care. I don't get mad about it. It really takes something massive to get me upset, or, something monumental to get me anxious about something. I've just been able to really regulate my nervous system from these good stressors. That's essentially what they are. By jumping in cold water, it's a stress on your nervous system, but it's practicing it's teaching you to handle stress when a bad stressor comes up.
Yeah, I mean, reason I talked about, so for years, probably since like 2015, 16, I mixed between cold showers, cold bath. I ended up just staying with cold showers because I was tired of just getting bags of ice with my tub, and plus it became a discussion in my house with my wife, and it was just easier. And I definitely can relate to that. But the minute I put a cold tub outdoors, and you said you're from this area, so you get the winters here, and in the middle of winter, but you're also in Colorado too. But those for Western New York, we average about 100 inches of snow, and it can get brutally cold here. But I put a cold tub outside, and it was a difference maker. Like, so I would have a tendency in a tired afternoon state to occasionally lose my temper on my kids or whatever, feel tired, stressed, anxious. Ever since I started being consistent and disciplined with that 5 minutes in the morning and that thing, nothing. And I know the science, but it's still, and it blows my mind. So I always, when people say cold shower, cold plunge, I always say try to do the tub if you can, because from my personal experience, but just do it. And like you said, and I talk about this regularly. And there's actually a chapter in my book that I've titled "Comfort Through Discomfort," because in the one that's coming out, because it's specific. It's the controlled stressors. We need these controlled stressors because we have so many uncontrollable stressors. You talked about the car cutting you off, the boss yelling at you, whatever in your life that's coming at you that you have little to no control over. But we need to balance that out, right? With the uncontrollables, those kind of stressors. And that's just one way. There's a million different ways of it. For example, another one that I've mentioned, I'll mention it again. I lay on like an acupuncture mat. For some reason, I need to be stimulated to find deep meditation, whatever. I need like cold water or needles in my back. It works for me. And that's the other thing I do midday, which actually, I just started that in my writing process, because I realized I was having a lot of writer's block. I wasn't being very productive, and I can understand why. As soon as I just did that, took 15 minutes to lay on that, I pop up and it's like boom, flowing. I found myself writing for like 4 hours straight. Sometimes it was crazy. Like you talked about the high in the woods, I got like a high off writing. Just some incredible stuff from that. That's awesome, man. You talked about being creative. So what do you mean by that? And what are some of the ways of being creative as far as when associating to your health, mental health, things like that?
Yeah. So I always time any cognitive tasks immediately after exercise. So, my morning routine is first thing in the morning, I'm kind of designing my day, planning out the content I have to create, planning out my workout, seeing what meetings I have. And then it's just executing from there on out. So I go to the gym, I'm there for 2 hours, and then I block out from 10:30 until about 1:30 every day for podcasts and content creation, brand meetings. I just know that my mind is going to be firing on all cylinders after that morning workout. And then in the afternoon, I always have a 60-minute aerobic session outside in nature. And so then I plan another block of time immediately after that, again, for cognitive tasks, because my mind is going to be, on fire after that.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, that's when I wind down more. And that's more about just like consuming as opposed to creating. So, in the evening, I watch YouTube and just try to learn something for 30 or 45 minutes after my recovery routine, where I have people over here every day. I feel like you could design your day around these health and wellness protocols to be the most effective version of yourself. It'll make you a better employee, a better boss, a better husband, a better father by doing those things.
Now, like, I know sometimes you work out on your own, like you went mountain biking by yourself today, correct? But you're doing this, you talk a lot about community and the importance of human connection. And you were talking about like going to people's doors, right? Are you seriously like knocking on people's doors or like just meeting new people? It sounds like you love doing that, right?
I do. I was going door to door in my first career and selling insurance, literally campground to campground, marina to marina. So I think that taught me, people skills, and also taught me that not to be afraid to put yourself out there, not to be afraid to hear no. Now it's much easier with a social media following to attract people into your life. But yeah, I preach about meeting at least one new person every day, and we have a sauna and cold plunge in our backyard, and we have a stream of people that pass through every single day. And whenever someone reaches out to me to, meet up for coffee or lunch, I'm like, come sauna. We have a sauna routine, 5 to 7, pick a day, come on over. You'll meet a bunch of my friends. We can chat there. And I feel like the best conversations happen in a sauna. It's a captive environment. Your endorphins are racing because of the heat.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that before.
Your phone will overheat in 3 minutes if you're on it, so you don't have your phone in there. And I just feel like it's the best place for conversation. So that's kind of reserved for community time.
Scott's my producer, and I don't think he can chime in, but Scott, I think we need to get a sauna in here just so we can have he's laughing, but it's like, man, we get a better conversations apparently when we're sweating in our endorphins. All the equipment, I assume, would probably. Oh, there you go. Oh, you're just holding out on me. Now I know the sauna's upstairs this whole time. Man, well, it sounds like you built like quite a network. You've got amazing people. Your energy is infectious. But how have you built that? How have you maintained that network, that support? How did that all take place?
Shared passions. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is when you find people that have the same passion as you, and also like really knowing your passion. I know what I enjoy doing every day, and I double down on that, and I find people that are very similar in those passions. And I mean, as you build that friend group, it just continues to snowball from there. Yeah. I introduce a lot of people, so the universe reciprocates, and I get introduced back to a lot of people. Whenever I travel, typically traveling for health and wellness events or community events. So, meeting new people is kind of built into any of the travel that I do. And, just being welcoming, I've always been really welcoming. I think that goes back to me being an only child growing up and always having friends over at my parents' house.
There it is, only child.
Yeah. Yeah, only child. So I used to have people coming over all the time to play basketball in my parents' backyard and to play ping pong. So I've always enjoyed just like hosting and allowing people to have an experience. And I also I get a lot of joy when people meet each other here and then I see a friendship form outside of here.
That's great, man. I'll tell you this, like for those are wondering how do I connect with this awesome, energetic and amazingly rip dude, let's just throw that in there. But because I reach out to him, I'm not afraid to reach out to people, but my assumptions, looking at his following, I was like, he probably won't respond, or it's going to be an autopilot or an Autobot or his assistant. No, this guy talks right back. He's a really cool dude. What you hear on this is truly who he is. And I encourage everybody, no matter what, just be that way, and you'll be surprised at what you'll get back in return from that, and it just becomes cyclical. Now, you mentioned on here from New York. I know you're from New York. Like, where you talk a little bit about your childhood. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was that like, being an only child in your experience?
I grew up in a really small town, Pulaski, New York.
Oh, we know what that is, right? We know what that is. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, I grew up snowmobiling and salmon fishing and boating on Lake Ontario with my dad. Sports obviously were a big component of my life too, playing 3 sports in high school. And then I went to college at SUNY Geneseo, so near Rochester.
No way. Yeah.
Spent 4 years there. And then I was in Syracuse, New York up until 2017. And that's when I made the switch to Denver. But yeah, most of my businesses I built in Syracuse. I co-founded a gym that still exists there. I'm no longer involved, but it's called Urban Life Athletics.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've actually heard of it. Yeah.
A couple restaurants, Original Grain and Exo Taco, which, to my knowledge, are still thriving. And
Original Grain, there's one here in Rochester. Yeah.
There is, yeah. So that was my buddy Chris Biley and I. That was our brainchild that we brought to life. And I mean, he's absolutely crushed it and operating it. I was more just helping him early on to build the brand, to get people excited about it. And it was just a cool place for me to be able to go and have lunch every single day when I was in Syracuse.
That's so cool, man. So why'd you move then? What was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, I just, exercise had become such a massive component of my life. And, Syracuse, New York doesn't really beg you to be outside every day biking and running. So I was kind of looking for another place to spend time where there was more of an outdoor lifestyle. And I found myself traveling a lot to meet risk takers. I started to really gravitate towards, people that were risk takers, whether that was in athletics or building businesses. And, I found those people in New York City and LA. And then when I came to Denver, specifically Boulder, Colorado, I kind of found the best of both worlds. Very entrepreneurial scene. And also the weather's beautiful. The sun is shining almost every single day. I like the 4 seasons growing up in upstate New York. But, I wanted a place that was less rainy and less gloomy and where I just felt like I could meet more athletes and entrepreneurs and investors and people creating consumer brands. So yeah, that's what I found here. I just fell in love with Colorado after my first trip, and it was a hell of a lot less expensive than getting a place in Venice or getting a place in New York City or Miami. So yeah, I found myself here, and it's the best move I've made in life. I absolutely love it here.
Maybe I shouldn't have asked because now I want to move.
Yeah, right.
No, it sounds, I do like a lot of things here. Like one of the things I love about Western New York is the nature. Like my brother lives in New York City, but I'm originally from the Chicago area. And it's all flat. It's just flat farmland in Illinois. There's Chicago and then there's Illinois. Like really, that's all it is. And when I moved here, I was just I didn't know. I knew New York wasn't just New York City. Like I'm not naive, but I'm like I didn't realize the Adirondacks, Thousand Islands. I didn't realize they were so close. I didn't realize this was New York too. I just never really thought about it. I'd never really been other than to New York City, Buffalo, and so. When I got here, man, so we're avid campers. We go to the Adirondacks. I will say I love that, but I know Colorado has that too. So, what do you got? Here's the 46ers. There it's like the 14ers or something like that as far as like the hiking community goes. So, yeah. You ever hike?
We've got about 50 14ers. I mean, our house sits at 6,000 feet. I think, Whiteface Mountain might be 4,000 feet. So we're 2,000 feet above Whiteface, just where I'm sitting talking to you right now. And I'm looking out at 8,000-foot mountains just beyond our backyard. I spent a lot of time in the Adirondacks. Oh, yeah. I love Lake Placid. I spent a ton of time training there. I raced Ironman Lake Placid 3 times. So, I think some of coming to Colorado was a reminder of, how much I enjoyed the Adirondacks and specifically Lake Placid, but it's just like everywhere here, every direction are the mountains here.
I think I'm in love. No, I mean, I love living in Rochester, New York, Western New York, but yeah, I definitely if I could pick a place, it would be there that I've experienced just because you mentioned earlier about almost like a high or hallucinogenic or something like that. And I'm that way too. For example, we as a family, it was my daughter, she turned 13 in August and she wanted to do the highest peak, Mount Marcy, for her 13th birthday. And we have a 7-year-old daughter. At the time she was 6. And while we're avid hikers, we had never done anything like that. We've done 10-mile and 12-mile. What I ended up doing was a loop and it was like 17-mile. And I was just impressed at my kids, especially a 7-year-old at like 10:30 at night, leading the packway, singing songs. And it was just this incredible feat. But speaking back to the spiritual, the high, when we got at the top of that, it was just, wow. Like we've been at the top of Whiteface. The conditions are different though. Like on Whiteface, it's like it could be calm and then all of a sudden like a 50-mile-an-hour wind. But with with Mount Marcy, it's incredible. So that experience, that feeling. And so I'm the same way. I get into nature regularly whenever I need some peace. In fact, my first book, I actually did a lot of writing on my phone just in nature because it was the one place I could find calmness. You said something about risk takers that caught my attention. You're attracted to risk takers. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I like people that are defining their own destiny and they're not afraid. In New York, there's a lot of people that were born and raised there that, to some degree kind of get stuck there. And, I feel like Colorado is a place where people consciously came here because they wanted to be here because of the mountains or because of something here. So, being around those people, it's a different type of energy than being around people that are only in a place because they have a job there or, their family is there. Yeah. And for me, I just felt like my energy changed by being around those types of people. And, the people you're around and the environment you're in is going to dictate so many of the opportunities that come to you in life. I literally travel to LA, Austin, Miami on a very regular basis just to bump shoulders with founders of consumer brands. And that's where they are. So, Boulder, Colorado is very similar in that there's a lot of entrepreneurs there. So, I know that being in an environment where I can have these chance encounters with people that for what my craft is, will present opportunities. That's why I pick those environments.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So you can just tell, but you also talk a lot about gratitude, positive thinking. You're full of it, you know.
Mhm.
So how do you do to incorporate that, practice it? What are some of your tools or tips that you have?
Yeah, so we started a gratitude jar a little over a year ago now, and almost every night we would write down things that we were grateful for throughout the day. Our friends would write down things too when they were over here. And the really cool part was reading it at the end of the year. And it was just a reminder of the people, places, and activities that you want to design your life around. You know, and it was simple things. You know, it wasn't the big paycheck that you got from something or the new car that you bought. You know, it was little like conversations with people, or my mom visiting, or Sarah's family visiting. Cuddling with our dog in bed, like little things like that.
I saw your dog wandering in the background there, so I was like, I wonder if that's one of
Blade.
them.
And it was just a really cool reminder of like, okay, this is what we need to double down on. Like, this is what we want to design our days around, are these things that we expressed gratitude for day in and day out. And it was a lot of the same things. I encourage people to do that, to start a gratitude jar, write it down. It's a great way to end your day. But more importantly, it's a reminder when you read all of them at the end of the year of how you want your days designed.
Isn't that crazy? So what are you most grateful for? What are 3 things right off the bat?
Definitely deep bonds with people. We actually spent some time in Moab, Utah, and beautiful environment there. Was able to do exactly what I wanted every day. We met some great friends there, but there weren't enough people there for me to have the chance encounters that I enjoy. People are always passing through Denver. Denver's a big city, so people are always messaging me to link up. And yeah, I love human interaction. I love meeting people. I love having conversations with people. I love adding value. I love getting value. That's something I'm definitely super grateful for. I think we're all grateful for our health. I'm super grateful that, I have my health and I can go out and mountain bike every day and hit the gym and, do the things that I really enjoy doing.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's some good stuff. Yeah. What is there a time that you, because I know this is another subject, just tough, challenging times where like you had to go into your gratitude journal or go to your gratitude whatever, or your gratitude jar. The reason why I ask that is there's been times in my life where like that has always like just changed the mood. Like, for example, I had a bout of more the neurological effects of COVID early last year, and it was how I really just started my day to snap out. I was waking up and I've always been very energetic, very positive. I've been described as being like by my wife as the Kool-Aid man when I wake up in the morning, to give you kind of an idea. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, once I got COVID, I didn't feel any symptoms. So I just went about my normal life. And then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, I just started waking up with, I had weird dreams and started having like a lot of like crazy neurological things going on. And what I mean by that is like I was waking up sad and for no reason whatsoever. And I was trying to get out of it. And so I went to the gratitude and just started writing down 3 things I was grateful for. And it was simple things like my health, my breath, my kids, this house, hot, heat in the winter. Have you ever had an experience like that?
Yeah, definitely. 2015, 2016, those were difficult years for me. I had a business that was failing. I had some disagreements with business partners during those years. I was exiting triathlon, which had become my identity in, a small city, and was trying to find my way and like what my next identity was going to be. And I kind of rushed my way into CrossFit thinking that I had to go right from being a high-level endurance athlete to a high-level CrossFit athlete. I got injured a bunch of times, had to deal with those injuries where, I couldn't train the high volume that, gave me the endorphin boost. And I feel like 2017 is when I really pulled myself out of that funk when I moved to Denver. So I changed my environment. I changed a lot of, my friend group. And I also, found the cold exposure. I found this place called Denver Sports Recovery when I moved here. And, I started doing the sauna every night, the cold exposure, the hot tub. The protocol there was 3 rounds, 5 minutes in a hot tub, 5 minutes in a cold plunge. So, that started relieving a lot of the aches and pains that I had from all of the high volume running I was doing. But more importantly, I was meeting a ton of interesting people by being there specifically at Denver Sports Recovery, in the sauna, in the cold plunge, in the hot tub. And, that was kind of the reminder of how important environment is, being around like-minded people, meeting new people. And, those things really brought me out of that funk.
Yeah, and I just want to point out there, in case you guys missed it, and you already know this, but when he was talking about the business failing, all these things, injuries, I mean, those are all connected. You're right. You talk about environment, and that's why you change it. You talk about the people you're around, words, thoughts, your energy, your environment, how it affects everything. So could you say that you could attribute, from the injuries to the business, all those things being connected, correct? A lot of just negative energy in the air, the environment, correct? Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So I just want to point that out, make sure everything isn't just random. If you see one thing and then you see these other things, they are connected in some form. So that's why you got to maybe it's not moving to Colorado, but just you got to be aware and have the self-awareness to maybe you change your environment, maybe you change the people around, maybe it's changing your mindset, maybe it's writing. You just got to find the tools in place. So you talked about, I just think this would be valuable for the entrepreneur, since you are listening, or since you're an entrepreneur, and I know there's plenty of entrepreneurs listening. Walk us down that business failing, because that's a fear of every entrepreneur. And how'd you come back, or what happened? Talk about it just in as much detail as you want to, especially the part about just how you came out of that.
Yeah, it was a prime example of scaling too fast. It was a gym that was growing rapidly, and we really doubled down on the growth. We opened up. It started as a CrossFit gym, and then we opened up a indoor cycling studio, which was really expensive. And then we opened up a HIIT studio, which was really expensive. And a couple of our key employees we had disagreements with, they left. And my business partners and I were kind of left holding the business up, but none of us really wanted to run the business. We all had other things that we were doing. So, there was no longer an operator involved in it. But, it was one of those things where it was a blessing in disguise, because I met my business partner in the restaurants that I ended up opening, and the restaurants became a successful endeavor. So the way I look at any of those things is, the more risks you take, the better you're going to get, A, at taking risks, and B, at assessing the risk. And it's really the best way to learn is just by sets and reps of taking risks. And there's going to be shitty times along the way, but that's going to teach you, not to do it again. Because when you lose money or lose friendships in one of those endeavors, it hurts. It really hurts. So it's not something that you'll likely do again. So yeah, it was a valuable learning lesson for me, and I was able to course correct. And again, I found a blessing in disguise with it. And, I had a software company as well that was failing for the first 2 years of starting it. And we didn't start firing on all cylinders and making money until we completely shifted our focus. Instead of being a one product company, we started developing mobile applications for clients. And we partnered with 5 Syracuse University students who were just rock star designers and engineers. And but we had to stick our neck out there. We had to wade in, and we had to try it in order to get to where we got. Yeah. So, again, it goes back to that bullseye analogy of, almost everything in life. You're going to have to throw a lot of darts at the dartboard in order to finally hit a bullseye. And when you hit the bullseye, run with that for as long as you find passion and purpose in it.
Yeah, take risks and possibly fail from those risks, but then learn from those risks that you're taking. It's such it's such a hard thing too, right? Nobody wants to fail, but you got to go with the attitude. It sounds like what you're trying to say, and is that go with the attitude that if you do fail, you have this great opportunity to win on the other end by learning from this, and know that, man, I learned from that. Let's not do that again, but let's take that and move forward, right? Yeah, that's such a valuable lesson. So what are some of your current adventures? I wrote down Urban Leaf, but is that what you're currently working on? What are you currently working on? What are some current ventures that you got going on?
Yeah, a new venture that's going to get spun up this year is a pre-workout supplement under the Movement is Medicine brands. I'm excited about that. I have a bunch of Movement is Medicine collabos coming out with Hydro Jug, insulated water bottle. I have a Movement is Medicine shoe coming out with Flux footwear.
That's pretty cool.
Some stuff I'm doing with GoRuck. tons of events that I'm co-hosting, hosting, community cold plunges, community rucks, community workouts, community sweat crawls,
Are these
multi-day retreats. So those are all exciting.
Is this all happening in the Colorado area? Is it happening across the country, or what's the details?
All
on
over
that?
the place.
Oh,
Yeah,
sweet.
Colorado, every month I do a community cold plunge and community rock on a Sunday. And then every month I'm in a different city, generally hosting a community workout or a community sweat crawl. And a community sweat crawl would be doing a workout at one gym and then running to another facility, doing a workout there, and then, likely jumping in ice barrels.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, you'll have to keep me posted on that because that sounds really interesting, and I'd love to share it with all my listeners here for sure. Man, so as we start to wrap this thing up, there's always, we've talked a lot about it from striving. You've mentioned a ton of it. Is there any other advice, especially those maybe starting out on their own journey, like to strive every day, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, anything else you wanted to share on that?
Yeah, I think so. There's a pyramid of wellness activities, and for me, exercise is at that top of the pyramid. That is what allowed all of these other things to fall into place for me, whether it was, getting good sleep, recovery protocols, meeting amazing people, designing my environment. Movement was the very first in that food chain. So yeah, movement is medicine. Just get movement down and other things are going to fall into place. So, in my opinion, the best way to do that is combining heavy lifting with some kind of anaerobic conditioning 3 to 4 days per week. And then the other days, easy walk, a run, a hike, something aerobic outside.
So some people are like, what's anaerobic? Now, I know, but just briefly talk about aerobic real quick, just so they're not like, whew.
Anaerobic is spiking your heart rate. So that would be like an assault-like interval, burpees at a max effort, sprinting at a max effort. They're very short, very high heart rate exercises. And yeah, I think you get a lot of bang for your buck in doing that. Endurance, obviously I spent 5 years of my life focused on endurance sports, but endurance sports, you can have high cortisol and low testosterone if you overdo it with endurance sports. So, obviously you can get injured doing, heavy lifting and anaerobic activities too. But, I feel like once you dial in the movement patterns and once you get used to the feeling of having a very high heart rate, that's where you can get the most bang for your buck in the least amount of time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that about the long endurance, because it's something I've worked with a lot of my clients and explain, because I had actually a client ask me today, he basically asked, do you think I have low testosterone? I was like, I'm not a doctor, but but it's the long endurance things you talk about, and it's a balance. And I try to tell people, no matter what you're training for, balance. Like if you always are doing endurance, maybe get some sprints in there. Sprints do have, or the anaerobic is what you're talking about, because what that'll do is, as you said, increase testosterone. Maybe, and as you said, I don't know why I ever thought about this, but it makes sense why hockey players always get in fights and why it's so aggressive. Even in my adult men's league, we're all 40, and there was a fight the other night, and I'm like, it's because we just go out there, sprint for a minute, and come back. It's constant sprinting, and then we're exhausted after an hour and a half of playing, and then we fight. Man, I really appreciate it. I do have one. You've done a lot. You do so much. You've been through a lot. We've talked about all that today, and you shared a ton of information. It seems like your imagination is massive, and whatever you can dream up is possible. At least that's the impression I get. So, with everything you've done, is there any other unicorn-sized dreams or goals or aspirations that are just so wildly out there? And if there's not, totally cool, but I had to ask, is what else, if you just could dream it up, the size of a unicorn-sized dream, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Great question. I would put a sauna and cold plunge on every street corner, just like there's a Starbucks on every street corner. That's what I would do.
Let's do it.
Unicorn dream.
Let's do it. I'm with you on that one, man. Eric, I really appreciate this. This was super energetic, super empowering. I know I'm going to take on the rest of my afternoon, super fired up. I appreciate you doing this. Of course, we're going to stay connected. We're going to have a bunch of his stuff on the bottom as far as ways to connect with him and anything else you want to provide. But man, thank you again, Eric. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into this episode of Strive 365. We know you'll find value. And for those that find value and think others will find value, make sure you share, comment, and subscribe to Strive 365. Take care.